of the revised Open Meetings Act for allowing these electronic meetings. So let's see, our person behind the scenes, I believe Amanda, is going to let us know when we're ready to go live. Matt, are you ready?
I'm all set.
All set. Okay.
You're ready and going live.
Okay. Thank you. All right, go right ahead, Matt.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the December 10th meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals, a volunteer advisory board appointed by the City Commission. Tonight's meeting is being held electronically and is being streamed live on the city's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Mr. Eldridge, could you do the roll call?
Yes, we'll start with Mr. Skalski.
Kalamazoo, and yes, I am here.
Vanden Hamburg.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Ms. Doan.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll? Are you able to hear me, Jeff?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You're a little faint. Okay, you did respond. Okay. There we go. Mr. Lager.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And Mr. Flaw.
Present, working out of my office, Portage, Michigan.
Thank you.
All right. Pete, are there any announcements or changes to the original agenda?
Well, the only announcements I want to make, we did get 2 items of correspondence this week. In fact, there was one that was received today that I emailed to everybody late this afternoon regarding the first request, and that was from Mr. Richard Stewart. And then Ms. Nancy Troff had a correspondence that she had sent in related to the South Rose Street project. And other than that, I also included the tentative meeting schedule for next year for the board to look at. And we will be discussing the results of our interviews that were done earlier this week to fill some of our vacancies. Since it is Mr. Skalski's final meeting, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'll be heading for Arizona tomorrow.
All right, well, thank you. We'll move on to the acceptance of the November 12th minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, can someone make a motion for approval of the November 12th minutes?
Make a motion that the November 12th minutes be approved.
I'll support
Second.
that motion.
There we go. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. The motion carries. I'll now explain our procedure for tonight's public hearing. For each request, the secretary will read the application into the public record. The applicant or representative will then have 10 minutes to provide their comments. Following that, public comments received via phone will be aired for the panelists and audience. And if you're watching this, the number on the screen to call to leave comments is 269-226-6573. And just state the case on which you're calling and whether you're for or against, and the announcement will be played live. Again, that number is 269-226-6573. After this, we will close the public hearing on the request. Once the public hearing is closed, the board will then conduct what is called a finding of fact, where the board states what they feel are the facts of the request. The board must approve the finding of fact first. Therefore, the first vote you hear is not a ruling on the request, but the finding of fact. Then the board discusses the request in order to determine a ruling. The board reserves the privilege to ask questions of people who have already spoken, even though the public comment portion has been closed. Once discussion is ended, the board will move on to a roll call vote. A full board consists of 6 members, with 4 votes required to grant a non-use or a use variance. Ms. Doan, will you read the first application into the record?
Yes, one moment. An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance have been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by the Lift Foundation. The request concerns properties at 210, 216, 220, 302, 302 rear, 308, 308 rear, and 316 Lake Street / 205 and 209 East Stockbridge Avenue, which are situated in Zone CC Commercial Community District, Zone CN1 Commercial Neighborhood District, and M1 Manufacturing Limited District. The applicant is requesting a use variance from Chapter 4, Section 4.2 Q3 to allow residential dwelling units on the ground floor of each of the proposed apartment buildings, 60 units total, where retail or other commercial floor space is required on the ground floor. Please note this is a renewal of the same variance granted February 21st, 2019, which has expired. Please note further that this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described above.
Thank you. The applicant has 10 minutes to present their petition.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Lisa Wilcutt. I am a representative from the Lift Foundation. Lift Foundation, as stated in your packet, is an affordable housing provider. It is currently the only nonprofit multifamily housing developer in the county of Kalamazoo. And Lift is working to meet the need that is in Kalamazoo County that's been identified in the master plan and other research studies. So one of the things that we're really lacking is affordable housing in the downtown area, and this project would meet that need. It's a need that's identified in the 2025 master plan, and as was read in the summary initially, this was previously granted and approved by this board. So the things that have changed since the time are that site plan approval has been given. So some of the worries initially were that maybe the wastewater system couldn't handle the new addition of and the new services that would be needed by this property. And that has been vetted and verified by the city that there are sufficient infrastructure already in place to handle the new property, the 60 units. This is a 100% affordable property. It is also not going to create a huge loss of green space. So there are the renderings from the site plan approval that are in your packet, and you can see that the north end of the property is virtually pretty much all green. We are implementing a walking path so that people can enjoy the property and kind of connect the property to other areas in the city. So what else? So I mean, it's basically what we had talked about, except that we've gone through some of the approvals that were necessary, which resulted in, you know, clearing up some issues regarding, again, the flooding in the area. So this property that where the buildings will be built is not in a 100-year floodplain. So there are not issues there. We have watched that part of the property to see if it will flood, and it does not flood. I think one of the other things that's important to note is that this is an area that's identified in future zoning as neighborhood edge. So it's a flexible plan. And so we're asking for that flexibility to be reapproved here. There are 2 buildings. The building that is not facing the street would have all units on all floors. So that those bottom floors are really going to be used for barrier-free accessible units. If units are not accessible to begin with, they will be able to be converted at a later date. That is based on resident need. So if this is a federal property, it would be the responsible the owner to convert that property. And then the building that's facing Stockbridge would have commercial on the first floor on the street facing side. The non-street facing side, again, would have apartments, again, barrier-free, so that we can make use of as many housing units as possible. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to add, given that this is something that this board has looked at before. Oh, thanks, Pete. Bringing up a vision of a site plan here, describing the amenities and the building. So it's this building where Pete kind of has his cursor now at Stockbridge side that will have commercial, 3,000, almost 3,700 square feet of commercial, which we are hoping to occupy with a daycare. We do have a letter of interest from a daycare provider that is also a nonprofit in the area. And so that's the plan there, to help serve the families in the buildings, but it would not be restricted to just those families. Anyone in the community would be open and available to take advantage of that resource. And then community gardens and whatnot. We're trying to tie into the healthy living environment that is already created with the KVCC Healthy Living Campus. So greenhouse, people can grow their own vegetables year round. And then there would be a community garden, which we would keep open to even folks who don't live at the property, who maybe neighbors want to use those amenities to grow their own food. So I also have Jeff Sweaterton. I don't know if there's anything maybe I missed, Jeff, that you wanted to add. Other than that, I think unless there are questions.
No, Lisa, I think you did a great job. Obviously, this project, as you've said a couple of times, has been previously approved for that variance, which is relatively innocuous. And obviously the project we're really proud of. It's going to be a terrific project. And it does utilize a lot of green space. You mentioned the need for affordable housing in this community. The project, and it can't really go on Lake Street because of the flooding concerns. We don't have them here, but yeah, we're asking for a minor use variance, and I think it meets all the requirements. And again, we also have, like you said, we have site plan approval, which is terrific. And we're real close on this, but because we weren't able to get the tax credits, we had to let it expire. But that's why we're back now, because it has to be exercised within 1 year. But we're just further along in the process. But none of the facts on the grounds have changed, and this board approved the variance before, and there's only more reasons to do that now. So that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do any of the board members have questions?
This is Dick Skowski. I've got just a quick question on the surface parking. Is that drained to the basin or the pond that you have to the north there? Is that collected and handled in that manner, or is that surface runoff handled in a different direction?
No, it's handled by those mitigation ponds.
That's what I thought.
Claim to not be an expert on how the flow works, but that's what they're there for, in part.
Yeah, I think that was the original concept that we saw about a year ago. So I think that was the purpose, and I'm glad to see that was incorporated again. Mitigates a lot of the problems that are attributed to the surrounding areas, not necessarily at that point, but others in the general vicinity. So thank you.
Yes.
Before we see if there are any public comments, Pete, does city staff have comments?
Thank you. Yes, I do have a few comments. We did get the one email this afternoon from Mr. Stewart regarding this project. In addition to that, I do want to point out, just to kind of go back and look at the history of this site. There was an initial design proposed and a rezoning proposed with that that came in early 2019. I believe that was January of 2019. And that went to the Planning Commission, and the project still needed some refinement at that point. There was a lot of questions raised. The Planning Commission rather, was a little unsettled about the number of undetermined items, and that rezoning was denied. The project was then revamped and came to the Zoning Board of Appeals because when it was revamped, it was determined that this one use variance for the ground floor residential was all that was needed for the project. And the project will have, as mentioned, a commercial daycare component. So it's not that there's no commercial, it's just there are residential units on the ground floor level. So that required the use variance, which was granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals in February of 2019. So since February of 2019, this went through site plan review. The project was further refined, and where it originally had 3 buildings, it's now got 2 buildings, with the northernmost building slightly taller. And in addition to that, the small community garden area and the greenhouse, you can see those to the east of the site, next to where the trailway comes through. I apologize, the image is turned sideways. I was trying to figure out how to straighten that out and I couldn't quite get there, and didn't want Lisa to complete her entire talk without having the image up on the screen. So there's been some additional refinement to it, but again, this is a reapproval of a variance to allow for ground floor residential units. The site has already been through site plan review, as Lisa Wilcutt mentioned, and so that more rigorous step has already been taken, and approval gained from the engineering department for the water, the sewer, the stormwater management. So the necessary permits from Eagle, from the state, looks like things are, have come together on the site plan side. So I just wanted to kind of recap that information for the board, so they understood that this has come around the corner, and it really is a nicely refined plan at this point. So if there's any questions for staff as well, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's check and see if we've got any public comments.
Public comments are queued. One moment, please.
My name is Sade Chambers. I am a resident in the city of Kalamazoo. I live on the east side of Kalamazoo, and I'm calling about public hearing E1 for Lake Street and Stockbridge Avenue. And I'm just calling as a concerned resident to make sure that the natural features are taken into account for this area and the flooding, and that the residents' concerns that live on this side of town are heard, and that we respect their views as well while going to go forth with this project, to make sure that all parties are heard and that we can have a clear direction of where we're trying to go, and just to make sure that the south side isn't forgotten about, and to make sure that they are protected during this process, and that the citizens that live in this area are heard. And as a concerned citizen, I just want to make sure that everyone's voices are heard, and that everyone is respected, and that we're making the right decisions on this request tonight. And I thank you guys for your consideration, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Bye.
I am calling from 206 and 208 Lake Street. My name is Bhaskar. Last name is Pisapati. I own several homes in the neighborhood, and I'm opposed to putting the apartment complex in this area. Right behind my property is where this apartment complex is going to be going. And that's a wetland is like a sponge. And I do not appreciate putting something there that's going to back up my toilets and the sewer system. We're already having major problem with the 206 Lake Street, 208 Lake Street. Basements are constantly flooded, and we need to come and take care of that all the time, and it's going to get worse. I'm completely opposed to that. We do not want another apartment complex right behind us like that. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yes, my name is Richard Stewart. I reside at 828 Portage Street in the Southtown neighborhood. I am also a neighborhood organizer for the Southtown Neighborhood Association. Today, we're in unanimous opposition to this variance. The Southtown neighborhood residents had thought we had put an end to this project on January 3rd in 2019 when the zoning board denied the applicant's zoning request based on the overwhelming opposition from the residents that showed up at that meeting. The minutes prove that the request was denied, and board members went on record to say that this was not the appropriate location for David Anderson's project. They went on to recommend he consider alternative sites that were available to him that would be appropriate for his development. The Lift Foundation has provided you a false narrative describing the nature of the use variance. They go on to indicate that they meet the existing requirements of the use variance, but the Southtown neighborhood has not been allowed to file its neighborhood plan that strongly opposes being considered a neighborhood edge. It is not a neighborhood edge. We are the Southtown neighborhood. And in item 2 of the false narrative, it indicates that there is an unnecessary hardship, that the applicant did not create the hardship. Well, the applicant is creating the hardship by building this building in a floodplain, so they are therefore causing flood concerns, and the flood concerns have not been addressed to the neighborhood. The developer is creating the circumstances identified in item 2. The properties have now been accepted in the NFP Natural Features Protection by the Natural Features Protection Committee. This project will not benefit the existing community residents. The city staff is working against the Southtown Neighborhood Plan and against the wishes of the neighbor. Disability barriers should not be in any of a new building such as this. There are 77 parking spaces being added to destroy our green space.
Hi, my name is Tina McQuinton. I live at 310 Lake Street, next to the last natural green space we have in Southtown neighborhood. This is it. We have no more. This green space helps us survive. This green space has its own natural watershed, has its own natural wetlands, has lots of wildlife. It needs to be protected. In our Southtown neighborhood plan, it was protected, but the city won't listen to our plan. We need this land to survive. I mean, it causes more flooding, like when they took KBCC growing field, took 12 acres away to build KBCC growing field. Now we flood all the time. No one helps us. We're trapped in our neighborhood. And we've been fighting this since January 3rd, 2017, when David Anderson first brought this up to the planning commission. They denied his request. It said this was not an appropriate place to put an apartment complex. It is a known floodplain, 60% wetland. It has a natural watershed. It has deer, it has foxes, it has owls, and everything else. I do not support this project, and I ask you deny the variance so that David Anderson can't reply for the tax credit in February. At least with the last meeting we had last year, it was going to be commercial building to where the neighbors would at least have somewhere to shop in the neighborhood. But you need to fix your infrastructure. You need to fix your storm drains. You need to fix your sewers. They are all bad. They all back up in our homes and our streets. This is not fair to let your people live like this. Please deny this variance. I ask you, please help my home not be underwater. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
This is Michael Corso. I own a property at 627 Lake Street. I guess I'm concerned about the stuff they want to do to those properties. I'm worried about open spaces and such. My phone number is area code 512-417-3005. My phone number again, 512-417-3005. I just hope there's they listen to the people and make sure we don't overbuild things in that area.
That is the end of public comments.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have additional questions for city staff or the applicant at this time?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
May I clarify one thing? One question that was brought up was about it's brought up multiple times, the Natural Features Protection Ordinance. Because this project has site plan review, and that process started before the NFP NFP ordinance was in place, and the element of the NFP review was added on our site plan review. This particular project has site plan approval, and that is already completed, so it is not eligible to be revisited regarding the Natural Features Protection Ordinance. Any projects coming forth at this point in time or later would undergo that second step of a site plan review if it's identified to be in the NFP overlay area. But this project already has site plan review and therefore is not subject to review under those new ordinance guidelines.
All right, thanks.
Peter, I have one question too. One of the respondents or callers made a comment regarding the building site itself being within a floodplain. My understanding was that was actually outside the floodplain. Can you verify that?
I believe that part is outside of let me just pull up the map real quick here. And I can show it. Let's see here.
I think the northern part may be in it, but the buildings themselves are outside.
So here's the view showing the floodplain map. So the footprint where the buildings are is outside the floodplain. Is everybody able to see that for the most part? And then the northern portion where the retention basins are, that's all clearly within the floodplain.
Okay, thanks.
What is the year definition of floodplain? Are we talking 10-year or 100-year? And seems like it's pretty close to an arbitrary line.
It's the 100-year floodplain that we're talking about.
That's correct.
And that is, that was taken off the FEMA maps and laid out, overlaid on our GIS aerial layer.
Do we know if those designations have been, those calculations have been altered for the phantom global warming that's going on? I'm joking, but so 100-year flood, they say is going to be every 50 years. So it seems like this project's really on the edge of actually one's belief about whether global warming is going to make this a 10-year floodplain. So the question is, these floodplains, are they on models from the 1990s or from 2018?
Well, these are the FEMA maps. Many of them do date back to the 1990s. You could also inquire of the applicant if there's any additional information they can share as far as the floodplain concerns.
So, yeah, I can say that David Anderson has watched this property. Like, he goes there and he sits and watches it to see when there's flooding in other parts of the city, and it has never flooded. It's right next to, the city building, the public utilities building there, and those buildings do not flood.
Thank you.
Why was the original variance denied when they went to reapply?
So to clarify, it was a request for rezoning that was denied. And when it did come to the Zoning Board of Appeals in February of 2019, the board granted the use variance, the same use variance that's before us tonight. So this project, was looked at as potential for rezoning, which in turn actually complicated the project and caused more concern about the increased density that would be allowed if it was rezoned to RM36. And so, that was one of the reasons why the rezoning was denied. And so the project, like I said, was some modifications were made, and it was determined that this was the only item that fell short as far as compliance with the zoning regulations. And they then applied for a variance in February of 2019, which was granted.
Gotcha. Okay. And the only variance they're currently asking for, I'm not missing anything here, is for the Chapter 4 to allow residential units on the ground floor.
That's correct.
Okay. So there's no other variance involving watersheds. There's no other variance involving impermeable soil. There's nothing. There's no other. That's the only variance they're asking for. So if they had commercial units on every single floor or commercial units on all the base floors, this would not be in our laps right now, correct?
That is correct.
So it would have went through site plan and would have went right. What's the next step after this?
Well, permits would have been issued for this project.
Gotcha. And is there anything that the community could have done to stop those permits from happening?
No.
No. Okay. So that's what I need
because
to know. Okay.
Eagle, even Eagle issued the environmental permit for it. So no, if without needing this variance renewed, if it was a project that didn't require any variance and they had commercial on the ground floor level of both buildings,
yep,
they would have received their site plan approval, and then they would have been eligible to apply for permits and get those permits issued.
Gotcha. Okay, this question is to the applicant. Were you guys purchased those lots, correct, to build those? The Lift Foundation purchased the lots to build those units on them?
Lisa?
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Well, we have an option on those lots Chris.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're in contract, you're in some sort of contract.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
And so,
perfect.
Yep, Bronson and Kalamazoo County Housing Choices, which also supported it with the letters, but that's the answer to the question. Yep.
Gotcha, perfect. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. Hearing nothing else, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for the finding of fact.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the finding of fact for locations 210, 216, 220, 302 front and rear, 308 front and rear, and 316 Lake Street, as well as 205 and 209 East Stockton Ave, shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated November 25th, 2020. 57 notices of public hearing were sent out, and one response was received by email from Richard Stewart and is part of the record. A public hearing was held before the board, and public comments were accepted. The finding of fact shall include those documents just described and also the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Lisa Wilcutt of Lyft, a Lyft representative, spoke on behalf of the application, as did Jeff Swenterton, spoke on behalf of the application. Tonight's variance request is a renewal request for the variance requested and approved on February 21st, 2019. Since the original variance was granted, the site plan approval has been given. Water system has been approved by the city. Staff clarified that the natural features ordinance does not apply to this project because the site plan approval was granted prior to the NFP ordinance. There were 6 call-in city residents who live in the neighborhood speaking in opposition to the variance request, mainly citing flooding concerns, lack of enough infrastructure on the city's part to handle current water issues, natural feature issues, and the loss of the last green space in the Southtown neighborhood. And I might add, a couple of them were frustrated with the city, as I know Arcadia neighborhood is, with the ability to submit their own neighborhood plan. I'd like that in the record. And that concludes the finding of fact.
All right, is there a second to that motion on the finding of fact?
I'll support that motion.
We have support. All in favor of approval of the finding of fact signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, same sign. The finding of fact has been approved. Ms. Doan, can you make a motion for approval of the variance?
Certainly, one moment. I make a motion to approve the use variance from Chapter 4, Section 4.2 Q3 to allow residential dwelling units on the ground floor level of each of the proposed apartment buildings, 60 residential units total, where retail or other commercial floor space is required on the ground floor. Please note this is a renewal of the same variance granted on February 21st, 2019, which has expired. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This request only for variance regarding the item described above.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, the motion is on the table. Discussion.
So I'm going to be in favor of the variance, not necessarily because I'm in favor of the project, but because the variance is just based on having have residential units on the ground floor. That is the only thing that we are here to discuss. And we know we have given that permission slip to almost every single group, every single apartment complex that came here needing that variance. We gave it to them almost unanimously. So I empathize with the community. I empathize with the fact that they don't want that to happen. I don't know the story of those lots. I don't know if they were originally for sale and the members of the community could have bought them or they sold them to them. I have really no idea what the stories with that, but they, it seems like, I mean, everything else as far as planning commission, everything that the city does to verify and vet these programs have already been done. So And there's a possibility it can solve some problems. We do need workforce housing. We do need affordable housing. There is a shortage. And we do need daycare. Daycare is a big deal right now. So I see it potentially solving some problems. I understand the community doesn't want it there, but I'm not here to decide if that's the case or not. Because the reality is, even if we deny the variance today and they just decide to put in a commercial unit on the base floor, they're going to build a building anyway. So it me doesn't make sense to deny it. It really doesn't. I think it would be outside of our scope to do so. That I'll pass.
I too will be in favor of approval of this variance today. We approved this in February of 2019, as Mr. Flaw said. We have consistently approved this variance for substituting residential where commercial is required on first floor in certain zoning districts. And I didn't hear anything that would change our decision from February of 2019 that's happened subsequently. In fact, the project has just moved further along.
I also agree with the two previous comments for the same reasons in general. And again, I think it's important in the downtown area specifically that we have 4 accessible units. I have a mother-in-law who's wheelchair bound. I mean, she basically needs something like that, or an elevator system, which, then your costs become too high for this type of housing complex or type of housing. So again, I will be supporting it for the same reasons.
Thanks. Pete, can we do a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. We'll start with Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Lager.
Yes. The variance is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Ms. Doan, can you read the next case into the record, please?
Yes, one moment. An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance have been filed development. The request concerns properties at 522 and 530 South Rose Street, which are situated in zone LW1, Live Work 1 district. The applicant is requesting the a dimensional variance from chapter 50-5.6C for a 12% increase in the impervious cover from 75% to 87%. 2, a dimensional chapter 50-4 to a authorized vehicle entrance for the building rise or loading.
Christina?
50-5.6C of 2 stories. Yes. Yes.
I was going to say your bandwidth is struggling. You might want to try turning off the video feed.
And then restart.
Okay, can you hear me clearly now?
Yes.
That's much better.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. To begin again, an application for a variance for the provisions of the zoning ordinance.
Christina, Christina,
The properties at 530 South Rose Street, which is
Christina, I think that your internet is a little slow maybe, or laggy, because we're not getting all the words that you're saying. I wonder if I could ask who'd be willing to read this into the record?
This is Dick. I can do it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yep. An application for a variance for provision of the zoning ordinance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by PGJ Development. The request concerns the properties at 522 and 530 South Rose Street, which is situated in Use Zone L, W-1, Live Work 1 district. The applicant is requesting the following. Number one, a dimensional variance from Chapter 50-5.6C for a 12% increase in impervious cover from 75% to 87%. Two, a dimensional variance from Chapter 50-7.42A to authorize a vehicular entrance for the proposed building on the building's front facade, where garage bays or loading areas of all types are to be located in the side or rear yard areas. Three, a dimensional variance from Chapter 50-5.6C of 2 stories to allow a 5-story building. And four, a dimensional variance from Chapter 50-7.2A to authorize a variance of 5 off-street parking spaces to allow for a total of 40 off-street parking spaces, where 35 is the maximum spaces for the 64 senior apartment proposed. Please note that this variance will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the items described above.
Thank you, Dick. Applicant, you have 10 minutes to present your petition.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, so we appreciate you guys reconsidering this project. We're very confident in our ability to get tax credits on this. As it was kind of stated, it's kind of fell in an awkward place between our last submission and variance approvals and the rezoning of the property. So instead of the previous variances that we had approved, we're asking for some different ones. And basically what it comes down to is, with the impervious variance, it's currently a surface lot, so we're not really making it any worse than it is today. The vehicular entrance, we only have frontage on Rose Street, so unfortunately we're just kind of forced to have our entrance on Rose Street, that's the purpose of that request. Off-street parking spaces, we feel it's pretty reasonable since they're all contained within the building. And then the density with the height variance. Yeah, with the height, that's just to get us there. So one thing I really wanted to point out about this project, not only is it affordable, but being a senior project, it has a really important trickle effect in the community. This won't be 64 new residents to Kalamazoo. This will be 64 units that currently live in the neighborhood. And so what ends up happening is those folks' homes will become untapped and available to more younger families. So it actually really doubles the supply in a way by opening up more affordable housing that's already in the neighborhood, by providing a place for these folks to move to. A lot of folks that are older don't want to maintain a home or can't maintain a home anymore, or may have certain disabilities. And so that's really what this project is built for. It's for those folks. So we appreciate your consideration. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, John.
No, we've worked on the entrance off of Rose Street and worked with Christina and group to make sure that we respect community and don't make it look like just a blatant garage door into the parking, to make it be respectful with transparency into the building, and yet make it look like it is occupied, as far as again, respectful for the area. So
I think that's all I have.
That's all we have.
So can you talk a little bit about the parking? Pete, if you could scroll back up so we could see that front facing, So I guess I'm understanding that all the parking is enclosed under the building?
That is correct.
Correct.
Okay, so, and then that adds one of the 2 extra floors on the building?
That is correct. That adds
okay,
one of the floors. The parking is a critical aspect of senior and in making it accessible and also safe and closed and close. It's all part of what really makes a successful senior development.
Yeah, and that's kind of the funny part. So previously the height wasn't an issue, but the density was. And now density is the issue, or now height is the issue and density is not. So before we achieved the variance for the density, and the height was all right. So it's really essentially the development as itself as a whole has not really changed from the original proposal.
So we're not bringing a new development, and that the original intent, and had we received tax credits this time, we would have been under construction with the building. So it's a matter of a zoning change, and now applying for a different variance that we had already cleared this hurdle before. So,
thank you. Are there any additional questions from board members? Not hearing those. Pete, staff
Well, I
comments?
got one real quick. So the applicant mentioned that there's already impervious soil there at the spot. But you just made mention that the entire ground is impervious currently. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, currently the property, both lots are essentially a solid surface parking lot. There is a dirt area. I think it shows up on the survey, but essentially the entire lot is a solid paved parking lot today.
So what you're saying is that if you were to not build this project, your project really is not adding any additional impervious soil to what's already there.
Yeah, correct.
All right, perfect. Okay.
Thanks, Pete.
Pete, city staff comments?
Yes, I do have a few city staff comments to add. Sorry, I got too many things going on the screen here. There we go. Okay, so yeah, we've got 4 variances in front of us for this particular project. As the applicant mentioned, last time this project came forward in 2019, it was under the commercial community, the CC zoning. It's now under Live Work 1, LW1, and that has impacted the parameters of the project. So just to clarify that first and foremost, the Live Work 1 zone allows for up to 3 stories in height, where in the commercial community zone, it was the 5 stories was not at issue. So, so the change in zoning, this was part of, the city's initiative to rezone these properties, as well as many others in this area south of the downtown, into this new live work zone. So it did impact the height. The lot coverage also changed. So where that used to be 80% impervious cover, it's now 75% impervious cover. We do have a process for an administrative adjustment, which covers a variance amount of up to 10% that the city planner can approve. Well, in this case, they're over 10%. So that was another dimensional variance that needed to be added on to this request tonight. And the other items, the parking requirements, yes, those are, those have been altered in the ordinance. We've made some significant amendments to the parking regulations to try to avoid undue asphalt parking lots and, space that could be used for other elements of a development versus just providing more surface parking. So, that variance is another one that's on here, and they've got 5 spaces shown as being over the allowed amount of 35. So they're looking at 40 spaces versus 35. And then the last item is the garage bay. And this is a requirement that has been in place where we have loading areas located in the side and rear yards of projects, not in the front yard. So this garage, even though it functions as the ingress egress for the on-site parking, it is essentially a garage bay on the front facade of the building, and therefore it does not meet the standards of the ordinance. So that brings us to the 4th variance. As you can see with the site, there's not a lot of leeway for any sort of driveway into the side yard and some sort of side access into the ground level parking. So it's a situation where it does, the only thing that works for this particular property and this particular development is that front point of access. So I hope that answers some of the questions to kind of bridge the gap between the zoning change that occurred in 2019 and their initial variance that was approved that then expired.
Thank you. Any additional questions before we see if there are public comments?
When did you come back, or this question is for the applicant, when did you originally get the variance for, I guess, when were you here before?
So it was December of last year.
Okay, let's see if there are any public comments.
Public comments are as follows. One moment, please.
Good evening. My name is Zach Bauer. I live on Hillshire Avenue in the Winchell neighborhood. I'm calling in support of the South Rose project and the necessary variances on that project, the variances that are necessary for that project. I'm employed by LISC, and we've worked with this organization, the developer, on numerous occasions. They are responsible landowners, and they are working diligently to provide an important a resource to our community in the form of affordable housing for seniors. This is something that we need. It's a vulnerable population that needs the attention, and I think that the developer in this situation is the right one. Additionally, I also have the privilege of serving District 2 as a county commissioner. This project is just outside of my district, and it is affordable housing, particularly for seniors, is something that is necessary. I hope that this body will approve the variances necessary to move this forward. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and have a good night.
That is the end of public comments.
Great. Could we do the motion for the finding of fact?
One moment.
Okay.
I make a motion for the finding of fact.
Oh, you got this one, Beth?
Oh, no, no.
I mean, you
Okay.
can do it if you want, Beth, that's fine. I just need a few more minutes. All right. I move that a finding of fact for location 522 and 530 South Rose Street shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated November 25th, 2020. 125 notice of public hearings were sent and one response was received and are a part of the record. Nancy Torf, 522 and a half South Burdick Street in support. Public comment hearing was held before a board of public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. In addition to the information and documents contained in the agenda packet staff provided for this request, the Zoning Board of Appeals received additional documents on the request, included none to follow. The finding of fact shall include those documents just described and also the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Note, the summary should only address relevant facts that focus on the requirements under the ordinance necessary for granting and the use variance. Okay, so 4 variances. Applicant came to us. There's 4 variances that needed to be done. They are in front of the ZBA in December. After the zoning change, it also changed the variances that needed to be done. The plan for off-street parking is in this. Their plan is to have off-street parking within the footprint of the building. The layout of the lot and the building makes this ingress and egress into the parking facility a necessity. They only have road frontage on Rose Street. They've had good community support and believe that it'll affect the community positively, not only for the senior citizens that are directly using the facility, but also will impact the community by opening up more housing for more families. Board member, Mr. Flatch, myself, asked about the impervious soil. They said that currently this building would not add any additional impervious soil because what's currently there is asphalt. Staff Staff noting the zoning was changed from CC to LM1. As a result, the applicant needs to acquire a new set of variances. Note there is not a lot of leeway for other ingress and egress points due to the layout of the building and the lot. So garage bay door, although does not comply with zoning, may be or is necessary for their building plan. Public comments, there is one public comment in support, mentioned that they thought that was a good idea, would benefit the community, and it had good professional experience with the company. And that concludes the finding of fact.
All right, is there a second?
I'll support that.
All right, all in favor of the
That's
finding?
That's all right. You got it.
All in favor of approval of the motion of the finding on the finding of fact, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Dick, could I ask you to tee the motions up one at a time?
Okay. The first motion will be for a dimensional variance from chapter 50-5.6C for a 12% increase in impervious cover from 75 to 87%.
And is there a second?
I second that.
Right. Discussion on this motion. I'm going to be in favor of this motion and the other motions on the table for this one tonight. We have approved this building before. There was a subsequent change in the zoning that is making the variances different, but the project has been approved before. I see nothing in the variance change or the ordinance change that diminishes the importance of this project. And with regard to the impervious cover area, I think the point that Mr. Flaw made that, you know, and was made by, I think, the applicant as well, this is a parking lot right now. Having, you know, a building here rather than a parking lot seems to be an improvement of use to me. So I'll be in favor. Pete, can we do a roll call vote?
We'll start with Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Chair Lager,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
All right, the motion carries. The second one.
Okay. Number 2, I move a dimensional variance be approved from chapter 50-7.4 2A to authorize a vehicular entrance for the proposed building on the building's front facade where garage bay or loading areas of all types are to be located on the side or rear yard.
Thank you. Is there support?
I support.
All right. Discussion on part 2.
I'll be voting in favor of this simply because it's used elsewhere. For instance, the old, I think it was an AT&T or Michigan Bell building right on the mall. Mr. Prang's building there has got a front entrance loading right into it with a garage door, I mean, which is generally closed at all times. So I think this is basically what you're going to have here, that's built right into the facade of the building where it's not noticeable at all, I don't believe. And I will be supporting it from that standpoint.
All right. Roll call vote.
We'll start with Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Chair Lager.
Yes. All right, Dick, part 3. The motion
Okay.
carries, by the way.
Okay, number 3, I move a dimensional variance from chapter 50-5.6C of 2 stories to allow a 5-story building.
Is there support?
Yeah.
I think we heard it. I think Christina's got that one. All right, discussion on the extra 2 stories.
The
No?
project was approved before, like you said. I have no reason not to grant this. It looks like it's a need for the community. I've heard nothing from the community saying that they didn't want this. To me, this just makes sense. This is a reasonable concession.
Yeah,
I would.
it's not like it's 10 stories. It's 2 more. It's a fair amount for the area.
Pete, roll call vote.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll. Sorry, I didn't see that. Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
and Chair Lager.
Yes. All right, and
Okay.
that motion carries. We've got one more motion for this project.
Okay, and number 4, finally, I move a dimensional variance from chapter 50-5 or 7.2, excuse me, A, to authorize the variance of 5 off-street parking spaces to allow for a total of 40 off-street parking spaces, where 35 is the maximum spaces for the 74 senior apartments proposed.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion on this. Hearing none. Maybe it's not necessary. Can we do a roll call vote on this, Pete?
Yep. Yes, I'm sorry. We can. I mean, it's good if we have for the record a few comments that speak to the practical difficulty or hardship. So I know we have a lot of variances bundled up here, and we're working through them. But it would be good to have some of the items that were mentioned in the discussion earlier brought back up as we do the deliberation before the vote.
That's right. Thank you for the reminder on that. I'll be in favor of this one. I think that the parking solution that's been proposed is a great one to have it within the footprint of the building. I think whether it's 35 or 40 from a street view, it's going to be the same. And this is just providing the adequate parking for the project.
And this
Thank
is
you.
Dick. I'll also be voting in favor of it from the senior standpoint. I mean, basically, the alternative is that they would be forced to park on the street somewhere, and given Michigan weather conditions, which change daily, hourly, or plus the safety issue for seniors, I would support the additional 5 spaces.
Thanks. Let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Chair Lager,
Yes.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Ms. Doan,
Yes.
All right, that motion carries too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Very much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to using your facilities in 50 years from now.
Some of us sooner.
All right, the third case of the night regarding Harrison Street. Christina, your microphone was better. Do we want to try to get this read into the record?
I could try this again.
Okay.
An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance have been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by River Caddis Development LLC. The request concerns the properties at 508 Harrison Street and 660 Gull Road, which are situated in use CMU Commercial Mixed Use District, Sub-Area 4. The applicant is requesting the following. 1, a use variance from Chapter 4, Section 4.2 Q3 for residential units on the ground floor in the proposed apartment complex where retail or other commercial floor space is required on the ground floor. 2, a dimensional variance from Chapter 3, Section 3.7, Table RF 0.1 to reduce the lot area per dwelling unit from 1,500 square feet to 1,234 square feet for 222 dwelling units. And 3, a dimensional variance from Chapter 3, Section 3.7, Table RF-0.1 to allow a range between 5 and 30 feet from the 0 to 10 feet front build to requirement for the primary building facade. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variances only regarding the items described above.
Thank you. Will the applicant has 10 minutes to present their case.
Good evening. This is Kevin McGraw from River Caddis. How are you guys?
Hi there.
Thanks for all your service. I'm going to let much smarter and better looking people from Vice present our case. They know it a lot better than I do.
I don't think you're talking about me, Kevin, but I'll give it a shot. Hi, everyone. Pete, thanks for teeing us up here and allowing us to make this presentation. On behalf of Kevin and the crew there from River Caddis, I'm honored to be able to be part of the project. I'm an architect with Vice Architects and Engineers, a local firm here in Kalamazoo. And we have a project that includes affordable housing, 222 units of affordable housing on that site. And if Pete, do you mind if I take control? I can pull up there we are. Post is in, okay. Pete, it doesn't look like I'm able to get control. So if you could pull up that site, I can maybe walk through from your graphics.
Pete, you're muted, by the way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I will do that. I'll pull the graphic up right now.
Okay, I'll try to do my best to walk through that without a pointer or an arrow on that. So what we have.
Would it be easier? I'm sorry, Mike, to interrupt you, but would it be easier if we put you in the driver's seat so you can steer through it?
That'd be fine. That way I can kind of use a cursor. I like to use my hands when I talk, and I guess this is the best way to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking back to the last site plan meeting. Amanda, are you able to give Mr. Flynn the screen share permission? And I'll see if I can do it as well.
If we can't do that, Pete, that's okay. We can. It looks like. Here we go.
Perfect.
Okay, can you see that screen?
Yep, we can see that.
Okay. So, and I'll try to keep this brief for everybody's case. I know it's been a long night for everybody, but just walking everybody through here, we have Harrison here and Gull here. Kalamazoo River is here, north is up. What we have is a series of buildings, building A, B, this is building C here, and we have a building or buildings, actually a building, building D, on an adjacent lot. And the concept that we have basically is to have 111 apartments here, affordable apartments, and 111 here. Building C is the leasing building, along with tenant amenities as far as fitness and gathering. This area here constitutes an outdoor patio area for residents for outdoor grilling, gazebos, picnics, and then we have a green park area here, which also allows us to have and take care of our stormwater management issues as well as floodwater control issues that associated with being this close to the Kalamazoo River. We are adjacent to the Kalamazoo River Valley Trail pathway. You can see that coming through here. It's a wonderful parkway. There's some historic, iconic buildings left behind, some outlooks on that, picnic pavilions. And so we really want to provide our green space, park space up to there to really create a nice buffer between this area, the kind of a public right of way with the trailway and our parking, and then the buildings here. These are 2 4-story buildings at this location. And then we have a 2-story building down at this area here. Across from us is McKenzie's and the co-op. The 3 variances that we're asking for, the first one is the first floor is a use variance, and that for the first floor residential. You can see that we're right along our buildings hug Harrison and Gull, which is a fairly heavy traffic road into the city. And we also have a tremendous amount of frontage. These are 280 linear feet of buildings here and here. You can also see the kind of curvilinear shape of the street going around the roundabout. And then in this area here, which is let me get to the zoning maps here, if I can get to those. Here we are. So this is the current zoning. At this point, one of the things that we've been trying to do, Pete, maybe you can help me through this, or Brian, I know you're on as well. If I don't hit this quite right, this is current zoning and this is future zoning. We designed the site plan so it met both. So it basically meets the current zoning requirements that it's under now, and then also working with the city, we're making sure that it also met future zoning requirements or the variances held through as they go through that process. So the first one again is for first floor residential in these 2 buildings here. This is more or less a commercial-like building in that it's for leasing, fitness and gathering. And then the buildings up front here as part of the project will be 2-story, it'll be a quadplex, 1 quadplex, 2-story live work arrangement. And we feel like that will address sort of the commercial aspect of it, creating a business node here across from the other businesses. And then really along Gull will have the first floor residential. The second variance that we're requesting is a dimensional one, and that has to do with dwelling density per lot, and that's spelled out on there. We're very close to meeting it as it is, so we have a slight variance in there. I won't get into the technical reading on there, but it was we're nearly at the threshold on that dimensional variance. And then the third variance that we're requesting is another dimensional one, and that has everything to do with the setback from the street. And if I can maybe get into this drawing here, this really illustrates that variance that we're trying. You can see well, we have a rectilinear building and then a curvilinear street. And when the roundabout was put in, the sidewalk was pulled off of the curb line for protection of the pedestrians. And you can kind of see the difficulty of kind of fitting a square peg into a round hole, if you will, to meet the requirements of that setback. If you look at the property line here and following that property line, which follows the roundabout and then lines back up with the street. And then right when the property changes, this is a current building here, but the property line here and then jogs back out. So again, we have some difficulty meeting those requirements with the curve of the property line down here and the jog of the property line when it comes to building B. We've done our best to move the buildings and meet the intent of the zoning requirement, pushing them as forward as possible as we can in both instances. I do want to point out part of the hardship on this is one of the requirements that Mishta will have for us on here is that there is a railroad setback here of 300 feet for the property. We also have the flood plain here, which is another sort of constraint on the project, if you will. And so this really, the railroad and then the existing driveway here really crowds the buildings in at this point. So that's resulted in kind of like this modified H shape, if you will, on the legs of these and the bump outs at the ends. We've tried to bring, or we have brought in the edge of these buildings within that 0 to 10. And where we are out of compliance is where we have the jogs back in, kind of creating mini courtyards, if you will, along that long facade. We've tried very hard to give that facade some articulation, so it's not a long, flat plane or mass along there. We've done that here. Again, we're within compliance at these portions here, but we're out of compliance when we have that slight jog or step back into the building. We feel also that's appropriate with the size and the mass of the buildings to pull those back a little bit from the street. And then the first floor of these buildings will be about 2 to 3 feet above ambient grade on there, which will help one, give some sense of privacy and security for the residents on that floor, and then also elevate that building a little bit. So Kevin or Brian, I don't know if I missed anything or if I took up the 10 minutes. I apologize if I have, but I wanted to give that full presentation.
Thanks. Mike, it was interesting to
no,
see
Mike,
that.
I think,
Oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I had a question for Mike, but I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, okay. I was just going to mention on the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, the constraints on this property having to do with, the floodplain, the tight nature of the site, getting the amount of parking required in here. Most of that southern portion, as Mike mentioned, is for floodplain mitigation. So we've got a lot of obstacles on this piece of property in our request for that variance on the dwelling unit density. Also considering the fact that the ordinance is likely to change and that won't be a requirement anymore in the future. So wanted to point that out as well, Mike.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, thanks for hitting those. I did miss those. Thanks for picking up on that.
Thanks. That was my question, whether they in potential future zoning had the same density requirement, but it sounds like it doesn't.
That's our understanding. Yes, it'll be live work 2, and our understanding is that has no density requirement.
And that is correct. Yep.
All right, thanks. Board members, are there questions?
Real quick. So as far as the setback requirements, when you originally designed this space, did it not have a roundabout there?
No, the roundabout had been there. At one point, we had part of the evolution of the project, and I will point out that in a previous life or rendition of this site, these very similar variances had been granted for this project, albeit slightly smaller because we didn't have this site at that point. So to answer your question directly, the roundabout was there. The issue of creating a curvilinear building to meet that is really can be cost prohibitive to try to take a structure that wants to be at right angles and square and plumb and get that to form the shape of the property line. So there's a little bit of difficulty there and some hardship in kind of shaping that building to that curve.
Gotcha. So you're trying to keep the building as close to an appropriate distance from the sidewalk, and it's hard, and you can't parallel that. So are you kind of, in a sense, damned if you do and damned if you don't? Like you're running into problems if you move the property back to be in compliance, but when you move it too close, then you'd have to. Yeah, you said curvilinear pattern of the street is something you're contending with.
Yeah, so just the two different buildings here and two different conditions because of the existing conditions. I mean, this is a four-story building. We have a main entrance here. We'll have an entrance on the back, and then and exit buildings here. It's a kind of a modified H-shaped building, but you can see these points here where we have about almost 40, 50 feet of frontage here and here that are in compliance. They are pushed forward close to that property line. And where we wanted to step back because we didn't want a blank facade up along the street. We really wanted to give some articulation to that. When I mean articulation, kind of ins and outs and some architectural and massing interest. So when we drop that back, and to do that, that's where we fall out of compliance. But we think with the scale of this building, the size of it and the length of it, from both an urban planning standpoint and architecture, I think that's actually going to be a pleasing effect. And that's why we would ask for the variance here. For the mass of the building, it will, we believe, achieve the intent of the zoning requirement, and that's keeping that building up close and creating that urban edge. And then with this building, with building B, let me get a little closer in on here if everybody can see that we have a property line coming here at this point, and then there's actually a jog in the property line that happens. And again, with this instance, you can see where the property line jumps over the sidewalk, and we really, that would create a problem, obviously. So we kept this as tight as we could. It's a little easier on building B to do that because Gull Road planes out and it becomes a straight line that we've met that up with and kept our building facade and face parallel with that.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Are the Pete? I saw you had a memo in here. Would you like to make staff comments?
Yes, I do have a few staff comments to make. I hope that most of that was articulated well in the memo, and I know that when we get into multiple variances for a particular project, it gets a little confusing. And as the board's seen, there's a theme tonight. There's a number of residentially oriented projects for affordable housing, and this is this third one is also a project that is where it would be applying for low-income housing tax credits in February of 2021. So because of the timing of that, all these things need to be worked out prior to that, as far as the general site plan and any special approvals needed. So to go through just in brief, and these are just some of the major points to keep in mind. With the first variance, the use variance from the ground floor level. This project, as Mr. Flynn alluded to, does have some commercial buildings that they're looking at that are right along the cul-de-sac, and that, so that plus the residential buildings along Gull Road, it is a mixed-use project. It's just, again, where are the residential units? Some of them are on the ground floor, but only in the two buildings along Gull Road. So we run into that situation again where we have the spirit of the ordinance being met with the mixed use, but we have residential units on the ground floor, and we just don't have any leeway, so we end up in this use variance situation. I also wanted to mention, and I think Brian touched on this, the concept here is that the city is working with the property owner to rezone this, and it will be rezoned to live work 2. If the timing had worked out better, where that could have been achieved before the submittal deadline of February 2021, we would have pursued that, and that would have addressed a number of the variances. That live work 2 designation will take away the requirement that there be commercial on the ground floor level. So that would be nullified if we had been able to do the rezoning in time. So, and then and as Mr. Flynn mentioned, there'll also be an area that will be rezoned to node, which is closer to it's where the commercial buildings are shown, closer to the roundabout. So they basically they are in agreement with city staff and the future land use map, and so there is a game plan for rezoning to achieve a parallel with that future land use map. So on the second item, dealing with the lot area per dwelling unit. Again, we've run across this on these other projects tonight, and we're looking at more affordable housing, which means in many cases smaller square footage. So you have more units, but not necessarily a bigger building, and that density increase with more smaller units isn't handled very well by the ordinance. The planning staff has looked closely at this, and they think that this is a reasonable proposal to provide a variety of affordability levels, if you want to say it like that. Again, when this is rezoned to live work 2, that lot area per dwelling unit requirement would go away. And then the third request that we're talking about is that the 0 to 10 foot build to line along the frontage of the property. And I thought Mr. Flynn did an excellent job of explaining that. Obviously, we always use the words practical difficulty, unnecessary hardship. When you have a front property line that looks like the front property line of this property, it is a practical difficulty. And then to add on to that, we have a utility easement, which is it 15 feet or is it 10 feet? I forget. I can't recall what the width of the utility easement is for that, for the water line that's in the front yard.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Pete. It's right here. It even pushes us back a little. That part of the pushback is this easement area here. If you can see my cursor running right along here, I'm glad you remembered to point that out. So that actually pushes the building away from that property line. So that adds to that distance that we're asking for. And that's
correct.
That easement here.
Yep. So you're not just having to position the building clear of the water line, you're having to position the building clear of the entire width of the easement that protects that water line. So in the end, the extensions on the ends of the building, looking at those, they're as close as 5 feet from the front property line and as far away as 30 feet. So really they've ended up with this range. If you look at the overall facade of the building and the distance from the front property line, and they've worked very closely with staff to try to position these buildings and to achieve the objective of the building forward design and the walkable nature of that is being promoted in this area of the city. So staff is supportive of that third variance as well because of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any public comments?
No public comments at this time.
All right. If there's no further questions, can we have a motion on the finding of fact?
Mr. Chair, I move that the finding of fact for location 508 Harrison Street and 660 Go Road shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated November 25th of 2020. 17 notices of public hearing were sent and 0 responses were received and are part of the record. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. In addition to the information and documents contained in the agenda packet staff provided for this request, the Zoning Board of Appeals received no additional documents regarding this case. Kevin McGraw of River Cadis Development is requesting a use variance and 2-dimensional variances. Mr. Flynn spoke on behalf of the project from an architectural firm. Specifically, there's going to be 22 affordable housing units. There will be 3 buildings. There will be a outdoor patio and a large green space that also acts as a buffer for the Kalamazoo Valley Trail. The site plan meets prior and future zoning requirements. One of the issues is a significant hardship because of the railroad and a floodplain. Mr. Webster also mentioned the hardship with the railroad tracks and the floodplain, along with the fact that the zoning is slated to change. Mr. Flaw asked if the roundabout was there before the project started, and that was yes. Mr. Flynn talked about the curvilinear building and the fact that to meet that frontage, it's cost prohibitive, that they kept the buildings as close to that frontage, kept the facade as tight as possible. Mr. Eldred spoke to the fact that staff is in favor of this. The spirit of the ordinance is being met, and the city is working with River Cadis. Zoning is going to be changed to a live work 2. And would have to ask that you see the staff memo for additional details.
Thank you. Could I check on one fact in there? I think that it was my understanding there are 111 affordable units and 111 market rate.
So let me jump in if I can as an applicant. It's 222 units, 111 per building.
Okay.
And the one building to the north is a 9%. Mista project. The one to the south is a 4% Mista project, and that one has 40%, 60% AMI. So they're both affordable. We're getting extra points by doing a 9% and a 4%.
All right, with just that clarification, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion again.
All right. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, same sign. All right. We've got 3 on this one. Can we have Christina, can you take them one at a time and start those motions?
I make a motion to the use variance from chapter 4, section 4.2 Q3 for
Christina,
ground floor in the proposed apartment complex.
I think you might be lagging a little too much. Is someone else able to make that? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Beth.
Okay, all right. Okay. I'm making a motion, variance 1, use variance from chapter 4, section 4.2 Q3 for residential units on the ground floor in the proposed apartment complex where retail or other commercial floor space is required on the ground floor.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll support that.
All right. Discussion. I'm going to be in favor of this. I think that, we've seen these issues with ground floor residential where commercial is required a number of times. I think we've balanced the need for more affordable units in the area in thinking about this. I think also the comments made by staff and applicant that this has the future buildings that will provide a mixed use character to the development as a whole, make this generally meet the spirit of sort of the live work two that this will ultimately become. So I'll be in favor of this. Hearing no other comments, can we do a roll call vote? Oh, Pete, you're on mute.
Ms. Doan?
Christina.
Oh, she may be fully frozen.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay. Ms. Vanden Hamburg?
Yes.
Mr. Skelski?
Yes.
Here.
Mr.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, I heard you, Christina. Mr. Flaw?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
And Chair Lager?
Yes. All right. Part 2. Beth, can you read the second motion into the record?
Yes. I make a motion that a dimensional variance from chapter 50, a dimensional variance from chapter 3, section 3.7, table RF-0.1 to reduce the lot area per dwelling unit from 1,500 square feet to 1,234 square feet for 22 dwelling units.
222.
222.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Is there a second on that?
I'll support that again.
All right. Thank you. Discussion?
I think the size variance, I mean, it's small, it's almost insignificant, but I think, again, we're looking at affordable housing. And as I think was brought up in the discussion earlier, that is typical for smaller units. I mean, we're not building for the Trump infrastructure or the higher level. I mean, we're looking at affordable housing for the basic individual. And I think this fits appropriately.
I agree with that. I'll also be in favor in addition to that, simply because this is intended to move to live work 2, I think we said, Gesundheit, where higher density, where there isn't this density limitation. All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Chair Lager.
Yes. All right, and the third variance request.
All right. I make a motion that a dimensional variance from Chapter 3, Section 3.7, Table RF-0.1 to allow for up to a 30-foot setback from the required 0 to 10-foot front build to requirement for the primary building facade.
Is there a second?
Support.
There we have it. All right. Discussion.
I'll be in favor of this variance, just because of the way that it is. I mean, road, everything, just the way that it is a yes for me.
I agree with that. I found Mike Flynn, the architect's comments that the only way to do it would have been to curve it, and then there was even then with the jut out across the sidewalk probably wouldn't have worked. And I feel like the solution that was achieved actually does sort of fit the intention of the setback variance to have that sort of urban, close to the road feel. All right, roll call vote.
And we'll start with Mr. Skalsky,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll. I can read his lips. Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Ms. Doan,
Yes. Yes. Did that come through?
Yes.
It did. Yep, thank you. Ms. Vanden Hamburg
Yes.
and Chair Lager.
Yes. All the motions carry.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Appreciate it,
absolutely.
you guys. Have a good night.
Too.
Thank you.
All right, we've got one more item of business. I'm looking for my agenda here, which was discussion of the interviews that we held earlier this week. Pete, do you want to sort of tee this up for us?
Sure. And if anybody is looking for background on this, I sent an email, I think it was around 1 o'clock this afternoon was when that went out, but I provided the application forms from the 2 candidates that the interview team thought highly of and thought really fit the profile of what's needed for the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we did interview 3 individuals this past Tuesday, and it was really refreshing to have a group of applicants rather than our 1 or 2 interviewees. So we had a full 3 interviews in a row. And, the team did come up with a recommendation that they were going to discuss with the board, but I wanted to make sure that, that all the board got a chance to look at the applications and the background on these two individuals. So I guess with that being said, I'll turn it back over to you, Matt, but I will add that the one applicant that, that may need some special accommodations, I have talked to him and, I thought he needed some special accommodations, and he really said that he is all set. That he can function at the dais with his own laptop, and so there isn't any difficulties in him handling the duties of the board.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll turn it over to you. So anyways, that conversation was had earlier today, just to make sure that we understood everything. And we can move forward with the recommendation that was discussed.
Excellent.
I don't know if you want to say anything about those two individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had 3 applicants, as Pete said, and each of them does live in the Vine, in the Vine neighborhood. So we're not getting a lot of geographic diversity from that. Both Jeremy Turpinine, I think. Turpinine and Remy Harrington just seemed like stellar candidates. Have an interest in the zoning issues. Remy was before us as a board 6 months ago or something like that, to get the urban garden or urban farms in the Edison neighborhood. And Jeremy has been before us for public comments before. And when Pete refers to special accommodations, Jeremy's blind. And I think he spoke on the South Westnedge Market case, the beer store across from Fourth Coast. The third candidate, Marshall Kilgore, was also, I'm sure he's qualified. It did seem, however, that his interest was more along perhaps planning commission lines or something like that. And considering that we had 3 people from Vine and probably wouldn't have wanted to put 3 on anyway, we decided to recommend bringing Remy Harrington in as the candidate for to replace Dick's spot, and then to bring Jeremy on as an alternate, I think was our final decision. And so Jeff was there and Christina were there. You guys have anything you want to add on that?
No, I think you did a good job in summary. I concur with your motion, if that's a motion.
I second that motion.
I make it a motion to have Jeremy as first, or to replace Dick. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Got that wrong. Remy to replace Dick, and then Jeremy as the first alternate. And then, Chris, do you still second that?
Yeah, I'll second that again.
And Christina, I'm sorry, we're open for discussion. Christina, you were there as well.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
For now, anyway. Yeah, I really like Jeremy's experience, but Remy seemed very eager, and so they're both very personable, and I think they'll fit.
Yep. All right. Hearing no further discussion, I don't think we need a roll call vote on this. We just need a voice vote, right?
Voice vote is fine.
All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed, same sign. There we go. 2 new board members coming on.
Excellent.
Excellent. Anything else, Pete?
No, that is it. I do want to say a quick thanks to Dick Skalski for joining the Zoning Board of Appeals for the period of time we had him. It's been unique to have that level of engineering insight into the past infrastructure of Kalamazoo for some of our projects that have come before us. So anyways, thank you, Dick, and enjoy all your other board endeavors you're going to get involved with.
Hey, Pete. I'm sorry,
I would
Pete.
also like to thank all of you simply because it's been my pleasure to serve with all of you. I see that the city of Kalamazoo is very fortunate to have such interested, knowledgeable, and willing people such as you to serve on specifically this board, but also I see it in the other boards that I'm on, the zoning or the board review too for properties, working with Andrew Falkenberg, and I see it in that level in other areas as well. So I consider it a privilege on my side, and I retired. It'll be 13 years this about another 2 weeks, and yet I think I'm busier now than I was then. I'm working with Ashland Township. I was brought on a year ago last May to serve 4 to 6 weeks, 12 to maybe 15 hours a week. That has grown, and like I said, I'm still there. And plus, I've got 4 grandkids that are taking a lot of my time. So anyway, I appreciate your service and attention, and thank you. And I look forward to maybe seeing a number of you in the future.
Thanks
Thank you,
a lot,
Dick.
Dick. It was a pleasure to get to know you.
Deanna, do you need to say something?
Sorry, you had mentioned, I don't know, do you have to approve the 2021 dates or anything like that?
We don't have to formally approve that. It was, I appreciate you asking that. No, it was just to put that out there to make sure that the board,
Well, no, Pete, the board should adopt a meeting schedule.
Okay.
And then it can be posted pursuant to the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. This is not our, our annual meeting is in February, but then by that point, we're already 2 meetings into the season. So thank you, Deanna, and thank you, Attorney Robinson. We should do at least a voice vote approval of the meeting schedule that I forwarded out.
So is there a motion to approve the meeting schedule that Pete sent to us?
I make a motion to approve the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting schedule for 2021.
All right, is there a second? Yep, we got it. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. All right, I think we're all motioned out, and with that, we adjourn.
All right, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.